Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Coffee and Open Source, a place to meet some new friends, have some great conversations, and maybe learn something along the way. I'm your host, Isaac Levin. And if you're enjoying the conversations here, be sure to like, subscribe, follow wherever you're watching or listening. Also, if you or somebody you know would like to be on the show and have a conversation, be sure to reach out to me on Blue Sky. My handle there is at isaac11.com. You can follow me on, or you can also find me on Twitter. My handle there is IsaacR11, or you can find me on Mastodon. My handle there is IsaacR11 at fossil.org. I have too many of these social medias. I probably need to drop one, but we'll not talk about that. Let's talk about tech with one of my good friends, a fellow speaker, somebody I see a few times a year, and it's always a great conversation. And my guest today is Magnus Mårtensson. Magnus, you want to say hello? Introduce yourself?
Hello. Yes, I do want to say hello and introduce myself. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Do you want to maybe tell our audience who, like the two people who listen who don't know who you are? Do you want to maybe do a little
Right?
intro?
What, did you tell my mom about this? Is she listening? Hey,
Well,
mom.
yeah, well, she's here, and then I'm here, so that's
Yeah,
the two
right.
people that,
Obviously.
that know who you are, right?
You're right. So I'm a speaker, crazy speaker guy from Sweden, right? So
Yeah.
I've been doing public speaking now for what? It's almost it's coming up. It's less than 20 years, but it's coming up on 20 years soon. That I've been doing that, and I've been in tech many more years than that. I'm a tech guy, Microsoft Azure guy by trade, basically. I live in Malmö in Sweden, and that's where I'm based. This is my home office we're seeing right now.
Yeah. No, we were a little bit inside the actor studio. Like you were telling me about your office setup, and I got a bit envious. Um, you mentioned that you've been doing this thing in tech for a while, and I love to start
Yeah,
conversations with how we got started. Is the cat leaving?
the cat's gonna
The
leave
cat's
now.
gonna.
She
Cat's
doesn't
like,
like when we start talking like that.
yeah.
The cat goes like, ah, no,
Cat's cat's
that's it.
not
I'm
cat's
going.
not
I'm
into
going.
it.
I'm gonna let her out.
No worries. No
I'm gonna
worries.
let her out. Leave, cat.
Um,
Go away.
So one of the things you mentioned is that you've been doing this for a while, and I'd
Yeah,
love to know like when it clicked for you. Like when did you realize
yeah.
that technology was a thing that you really enjoyed?
So I've had the opportunity to have a PC and a Commodore 64 and Amiga and all those things as a young man, and I guess my parents, my father mostly in particular, were kind of tech interested, at least to have the things around, and I think they made a good investment in that, and in making sure that the kids, I have two brothers, that we had some stuff to play games on and so forth, right? Like a little Commodore 64 with a cassette record
Sure.
thing with the games that you had to load. Um, but that's not like when it like tech was always there, but I thought I was going to become a building engineer,
Mm.
like a building architect rather, right? I was looking towards that, um, and around the time I actually went to high school with some sort of a program towards that direction
Okay.
for building engineers, building engineers, calculating bridges and things and weights and stuff. And then I went to the university, which the closest one here is Lund University. It's only in the next town over. It's a big and very old and prestigious and very nice university that I wound up going to. But I thought I was going to become an architect for buildings. I became a software architect instead,
Sure.
because when I came there, it was like an open day. You go and see what they have done and so forth. They had displayed all these nice, little miniatures of buildings and stuff. And then it hit me. I was like, dang, if I'm gonna be an architect for houses, I actually have to know how to draw and
Oh.
and
Oh.
and
Interesting.
create and do a bunch of things. I was like, huh, I should have thought of that. Dang, that wasn't so good. Never occurred to me that it would have been like so much of that. Obviously, I should have known. So the next thing on my list was let's take a look at, and I'll signed up for the intro course, the A level 101 course for
Hmm.
computer science with Lund University, and I wound up getting my master's in computer science from Lund, and the rest is kind of history from there, if you will.
That's pretty fascinating. Like you, so, and I'm gonna paraphrase. So if I paraphrase something correctly, please correct me. Like it's funny that you mentioned like, oh, maybe I'm not gonna like maybe the architecture, like building architecture is not gonna work out because of the art piece of it, like the having to
Right.
draw. And like you kind of equated that with like not really being like artistic, right? To an extent.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, but I didn't have the skills of drawing
Sure, sure.
with pens and
Yeah.
things.
Well, and the reason why I asked that is because I've had this conversation a few times with folks.
Hmm.
Like, I think software engineering or software architecture is very much a form of art. Like,
Oh yeah, yeah,
anybody who has, had to build something, like there's an art to it, and there is
yeah.
like you can see it. Like, I mean, it's all subjective, but like you can
Yes.
see, like just like if you're at the
Yeah.
museum and you look at a painting, you're like, oh, that painting is not for me. Like you can look at an architecture and be like, oh, that architecture is just not for me. But also, I think that there's like there is a craft to it. I also think there's
Yeah.
a pretty solid like connection between the classical arts and technology. Like you know,
Yes.
just by the amount of people in tech that they do fine art, they play music, they do all sort.
Yeah.
They use technology to
And
make art.
you have your guitars there in
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
background,
yeah.
sir.
That's
Right?
well.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. They're just
joke.
they're just for show.
I joke. This is art. Like
Yeah.
I don't play enough. Like, but I like the way guitars look.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
so here's a
Oh,
question.
I agree with that.
Yeah. So here's a question for you. So obviously you had an interest in like the process of building things. I think that's fair to say,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like the classical architecture, like civil engineering or building engineering and things like that.
Right.
Like there is definitely you need to have like a methodical approach to the way things are made. Did you have like even at a young age, like were you always very curious about like how things were made, like tinkering? Did you take stuff apart, put stuff back together? Did you do all that sort of stuff?
I did a fair bit of that,
Yeah.
especially with electronics.
Yeah.
I built like we did back then, right? It's very common practice back then to build your own PC. You
Sure.
you
Sure.
you like you spend hours and hours trying to figure out which components to get, and then
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
get them and you have them shipped, and you start putting them together, wires and all the things, right? Some people do that still today, and I'm very proud and honestly, I'm very happy that my son decided to do that. We got him a gaming station. Right?
Hmm.
He's 15 now, and
Yeah.
like a year back, it was time to actually get like a major upgrade, right? So we decided what to get, and we got that major upgrade with some different kinds of parts and stuff. And the parts were shipped, right? So he has an existing functional working PC, and he has some things.
Yeah.
And I was like, how's this gonna be? How's this gonna go? I was like,
Yeah.
either I get involved with that, and like would maybe he would lean on me and I would take over, or I go like, okay, go ahead and do it,
Hmm.
and I'm very happy that I did, because either like there two things can happen, right? Either something breaks,
Yep.
and there's a learning in that, right? Or he makes it work,
Hmm.
and the achievement, right? And he made it work, and like he took his PC completely apart, took out everything, put all the new things and some of the old parts back in again, and everything worked
Yeah.
just beautifully, right? So it's a little bit like that. There's this like a little cartoon that I read recently. When you do something like that, and I think it's true for many of us in tech, as a young person, we had some people allowing us to tinker and
Hmm.
figure out,
Yeah.
and along those lines makes a lot of mistakes, right? So the little cartoon is somebody's like getting the toolbox, and can I use the hammer and the saw and the things, and it's like, and the dad is like, sure, you can go
Yeah.
ahead and do that, and then the mother comes in like, oh my god, I don't think this is going to end well. And he says, no, I disagree. I think it's not going to start well. It's not going to
No. Yeah.
begin
Yeah.
well. But then in the future, it's going to end really well.
It's pretty fascinating. As somebody who I'm in my late 30s, and I remember
Mhm.
building a computer when I was in college.
Right.
And I also like I got a computer later in high school,
Mhm.
like I think I was a sophomore when we got our first computer, and I took it apart and put it back together. I've told that story 1,000 times. My
Mhm.
father was not happy. Um, but like I remember there was a point in time when like building a PC was somewhat dangerous, right? Like you do something wrong, like you can mess up the BIOS, or you
Yep.
can like
And
and
then
uh you know
fry something and it gets
exactly.
broken.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or like and did you remember like you had like the static electricity things that you had to like clip on
Oh
and
yeah,
stuff
yeah.
like
I think the band thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um we were talking about this before we got started. Like I'm in I ordered parts and I'm waiting for them to arrive phase of building a new PC, and
Mm.
it's one of those things where it seems like building PCs is a bit more plug and play, but there's like far more things you need to be thinking about, like liquid cooling and overclocking
Oh,
and all in firmwares and all these sort of crazy things because we're like trying to smash up against Moore's law as hard as physically possible, right? Um,
yeah.
and I was
That's a
thinking,
good point. As hard as physically possible.
yeah,
Fair enough.
yeah,
We're getting to the point, right?
yeah, and I was thinking about this. It's like, are we, are we transitioning from like, the tinkerers of when we were younger, where it's like, there is failure to it. Like, you could do something wrong. And I think now, like, you can still do something wrong, but there are far more guardrails. If you buy the right parts and you follow the instructions, more than likely it'll just work. Do you think we're kind
Hmm.
of losing like that ability to make mistakes in this space? And I guess it kind of transcends into other things too. Like I have a whole thing about, and I'd love to talk to you because you have a son, about like,
Mm.
do they still have the curiosity that you think that we as young adults had, or young kids had? I know
Huh.
I just ranted a little bit, but like I'd love to get your
No, that's
thoughts.
okay. No, it's okay. I think it's still true. As I see it in my son still. My daughter is not super interested in tech stuff
Sure.
per se. She does study natural science and stuff, so she's got some of that, but not to like tinker with electronics. Is not her game.
Yeah.
But my son does, and no, he's into it, and it's I would say that it's still similar. Some of these components, if you will, are probably several generations more advanced than
Yeah.
they were back in the day when we were using them. Not only faster and bigger, but essentially you can get all these different things like little cubes of things that you still put into your PC or your construction of whatever it is that you're building. So I think it's similar still, just gotten more advanced in some ways, like you were saying.
Yeah. It is interesting because I was having this conversation with a friend like a couple of weeks ago about how like kids today, and I even see like my kids are 9 and 7, and there are
Mhm.
so many like areas of computing that they're native in. Like they grew
Oh
up
yeah.
with like touch devices. Like my kid who's 9 will go to a screen and try to touch it, or
This, right?
yeah, right, the phone thing.
It's always existed for
Yeah,
them. This always existed, right? We
yeah,
remember when we had our first mobile phone, it looked nothing like this.
yeah.
This is not a mobile phone. This is a little PC, is what
Sure.
that
Yeah,
is,
yeah,
or
yeah.
similar, right?
Yeah. If
So
only
that always existed
if only a
for
company
them.
like decided to like trademark the phrase pocket PC and like try to make a product. If that only happened, anyway.
If that only happened.
And if it was, and if it would have been so successful. Anyway, um, like also like this thing about like what like internet. Like my
Mhm.
kids don't understand the internet. They understand Wi-Fi. So
Yeah.
like when they know that my computer is like plugged into the internet, but they don't understand why. Like, why would you plug your computer and it's just Wi-Fi? I'm like, well, it's faster and there's less latency and blah blah blah. And they're like, yeah, but like Wi-Fi is everywhere. I'm like, well,
Mhm.
no, technically Wi-Fi isn't everywhere because like other like with your phone, it's not really Wi-Fi. Whatever. My kids are like, no, it's like it's all Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And
Well, I wired up all of my house. I have really good access channels and
mhm,
ways to get wires everywhere. So I did that, and I think my son, realized the value of having a landline, a physical cable
sure,
running to his Xbox and his PlayStation and things like
yeah.
that. I'm a geek father, so we basically have all of the above.
Well, yeah, I think like it's our responsibility to ensure that all of the toys that we either wanted or didn't have when we were younger, our kids get.
Yeah.
Because I mean,
Well,
let's be
I run my own company, right? So I
yeah,
can buy things for the company.
yeah. Well, let's be real too. Like, I mean, like in tech in general, like you are solidly like financially pretty sound, right? If you're like, even if like I've had situations where I've been out of work for a bit and I've never really worried about like finding the next job, right? Or
No.
I've never really been concerned about how I'm going to be able to pay for things. I know that the tech market right now is absolutely ludicrous. But I think that there is stability, and also like it's one of those things where tech, like, it pays so well in general.
Well, I mean, with experience, right? So I've been in tech now. Like the joke that I make is that I graduated university in the last millennia, right?
Hmm.
In '99, right? So I've been 25 years in tech,
Yeah.
and with that experience and the last 14 years as an MVP. To be very honest, and this is just being honest, it sounds maybe I don't want it to come across as boastful, but it's a factual thing that nobody cares to ask me for a CV or any such thing anymore. Why
Sure.
would they? If they're talking to me, they know who they're talking to already. There's no reason to ask me for credentials
Yeah.
anymore. And so I guess with like across to what you were saying, right? After a certain amount of time in this game, if you do it right, then yes, you end up kind of here where there's business for sure. If one of my assignments with a client ends, I mean, how many others honestly are there
Yeah.
for the people who have a lot of experience? And I'm happy to have that at this time in this portion of my life, right?
Yeah, I was talking with somebody about this yesterday, actually, about how like
Mhm.
as you get like more advanced in your career, like your jobs become less about like skills and more about networking. Don't get me
Oh
wrong,
yeah,
like skills are very
my God,
important, but like how many
I
times
am.
how many times have you like been asked like, "Oh, Magnus, could you tell me like such and such like technical question?" It's like,
Yeah,
no. Like
uh,
what you want
yeah.
is is me as somebody with experience and me with my network of access to people, right?
To have access. That's true. That's true. I mean, I'm still super geeky. I was doing some scripting just before here for a workshop that I'm
Mm-hmm.
preparing, and I do a lot of advanced level like bleeding edge stuff because I want to figure things out. And as an MVP for Microsoft, I get a chance to get my hands on some things before it's even
Yeah.
publicly shown. And they're often quite like, okay, here's the status of it right now. This is an alpha. It's kind of quirky, but you can tinker with it if you like. And so there's still a fair bit of tinkering and tech geekery in my life, and I'm grateful for that. But a lot of it is using, like you said, networking, yeah, networks as connections to other people, and just being asked to figure things out for
Yeah.
companies because I have some mileage at this point, and I can like, okay, yeah. So I was talking to this customer about a year ago, and they had a similar problem. That's what they're paying me
Yeah.
for.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's one of those things like they're paying for your experience, and I think
Yeah,
experience is a great thing, but it's also a dangerous thing, right? Right? Where I think we all have bias, and we all, if we do very similar things over and over and over again, we build a bias that may or may not be like something that's contemporary, right? Like I see this,
yeah,
I see this a lot, especially like I'll go to a conference and I'll talk to an attendee and they've been doing the same thing for 10 years or whatever, and I asked them, I'm like, okay, so what are some of the things that you're like paying attention to that are new in tech? And they say like, oh, I came to this conference because I haven't done anything new in tech in 10 years,
yeah.
right?
That's very fair. I know a lot of people who have been, super smart and really engaged with, let's say, a specific product or a specific thing, and after some years, it can begin to feel a little bit. I'm doing the same thing. I know
Yeah.
all there is to know about this thing. I'm really good at it. Thank you very much. Right? It pays my salary and there's food on my table because I know everything about this one thing, and I'm really experienced. But, at the same time, am I learning anything new, right?
Yeah.
And I think I was lucky. I was fortunate because I was I was in the audience at the PDC of '08 when Ray Ozzie, who was the CTO of Microsoft at that time, he was on stage and he announced, he walked across the stage and he said, announcing Windows Azure,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That was what it was called. So I think I was fortunate because I was already interested in being sort of the, again, coming maybe back to that drawing and designing
Hmm.
artistry that I maybe, with the same as building architecture, I didn't maybe get into. I was already at that point, and in '06, I was content with being the architect or the backend developer or behind the API. The API is my UX basically, right?
Yeah.
And so I was there in the audience and I heard him, Ray Ozzie, then talking on stage about this Azure thing, this Windows Azure. It was a reveal PDC, right? Everything was revealed when the audience was there, right? During the keynote, they were running around the venue, tearing down posters and putting new posters up, and there were physical paper flyers with the revealed hidden sessions when we exited the keynote hall, right? And I was like, this Windows Azure thing seems cool. I'm going to focus in on this thing and see what happens, right? 14 or, well, this was 08 again. So 16 years later, right? I have done a lot in Azure, but I'm really fortunate because Azure, if you call Azure one thing, oh my God, it's a pretty huge thing, right? There's always new things to learn. There's no physical amount of time for any person that exists to learn everything about Azure. It's impossible. Hundreds of services. So I think I was lucky.
I mean, it also too, like it's one of those things where I think you see something and you see the immediate potential, right?
Oh yeah.
Like, I wasn't at, PDC in 08. Like my first introduction to Azure in the cloud was a little bit later, like 2014 maybe, right? So like Azure had been somewhat mature, but like it was still a lot of infrastructure as service, platform as a service was starting to get a little bit more headway. Like people were still using like cloud services, which was like one of the canonical services.
Cloud service. That was the first service, right? That was the first compute service in Azure.
And I was working at a consulting company, and like it was one of those things where like there was a ask amongst like a bunch of consultants. It's like, who here wants to learn about Azure? And I was like, me, like this is interesting. And he was like, okay, well here's the deal. Like if you can go and study and get your certification, we'll put you on this project and whatever. And then from there, I became of like one of those people that was super interested in like continuing to stay relevant in Azure. And I think that was one of the building blocks to getting to where I am now, where, I can't imagine a world where I'm not working in this space.
No, same with me. I mean, there's always more to learn. When Azure was announced, there were 8 Azure data centers. 4 of them were in the US and 2 in Europe and 2 in Asia. There were 8 total. And there was like, a total of maybe 5 or like there were not many services in the platform at that point. There was the compute service was actually at that point called a hosted service.
Yep.
You could have a web and a worker role. There was storage and a database, and there was a couple of features in storage. It was table storage, which still exists today, right? Blob storage and so on. But there was not a lot in there. So at that time, you could most certainly be an expert on all the things that were in the Azure platform. That was fair. But now nobody knows how many data centers even, right?
Yeah.
There's lots. I just counted. In fact, it's funny because I was told you that I was scripting before. So I did a get locations from the data center regions, and I piped that into a measure function to count. There was 96, I think, that I had access to. I think there are more that I don't even have access to.
96,
right? So
96 different locations.
Regions that I was able to deploy my app to 96 different regions across the world, and I could just write a script and deploy compute in any one of them or all of them, right?
Yeah, it's huge. Pretty crazy. Like, I mean, and I was also thinking about this. It's probably been a while now, but I was thinking about like the original like goal of Azure was very much like it was very platform as a service initially, which I think was kind of interesting because at the time, like AWS was a thing and they were very much selling like, oh, you want cloud-based VMs, you want infrastructure as a service, this is what you want, because it was kind of replicating like the data center model that had been around for years. And it's interesting that like the first like Azure services were very platformy. They weren't like VMs and networking or whatever. They had that stuff, but like it was very forward with like, here's some platform stuff. Yeah. Because do you really want to manage stuff?
Yeah, it was a thin at that time. Those services were like a very thin veneer over a VM that
Yeah,
was under there.
yeah.
You could see it, like
You
it
can
was
remote
almost like
into
it
it.
translucent.
Yeah,
It was there, right?
yeah,
But nowadays there are of course many services that are nothing like logic apps.
yeah.
You just deploy it like you can't. It's right. It's there somewhere somehow, but you can't open the hood and peek underneath.
It's it's
Uh,
funny when I first saw Logic Apps. So I had a job years ago where I worked in a tool called Web Methods, which is like a
mm,
which do you know Web Methods? Have you heard of it?
I remember web
Yeah,
methods.
it's
Yeah,
like if for folks that might not know, it was like kind of similar to BizSpark. Was that the Microsoft equivalent? Where it was
that could be.
where it
Yeah.
was like, it wasn't writing code, it was building blocks. So
Mm.
you would drag a loop and then inside that loop you would put stuff in there. It's kind of like
Yep.
how a lot of modern like children accessible like game development is.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I remember when I first saw like Logic Apps, I was like, I did this like 10 years ago. Like I did like
Uh-huh.
and it's one of those things where like tech is so
Um,
cyclical. Even now, like we're getting into like this world of like AI, and you talk to
mhm.
people and like, oh, we're building AI stuff, and we're all building it like with building blocks. Like
Yeah.
it's everything is like very like low code. That's the phrase they use,
And
right?
then yeah, yes. And there's always this, probably, there's a business reason underneath there, of course, but that there's always this dream of being able to make it simple and
Yeah,
make it easy and accessible for everyone. Even like, I mean, how many iterations have we been through in this industry where you want to end up with something that a business user can, build their own
oh sure,
apps
sure,
with?
sure, sure. Yeah,
And where the current iteration, the current one is Power Apps, and it's actually got a lot of merits. And I think the cloud is largely responsible for that success
hmm,
as well, because with that platform, you could build some really sophisticated things that were not possible to do before. So the previous examples or previous attempts at the same thing, maybe were not. So technologically advanced that they were actually going to stick around. So we've seen a lot of, oh, this is the new thing for the business,
yeah,
user, and it's happened many times. But I think it's actually similar to building the PCs that we started talking
yeah,
about with the kids, right?
yeah.
It's very similar.
Let me ask you maybe a spicy question, right? Like,
Huh?
like the Power Apps thing, like the citizen developer thing is very fascinating to me
Yeah,
because the marketing is always like, let your business users build apps, right?
yeah,
And I mean, I've very much been on the path of like developers like can take just as much advantage of like this low code way of building things than, but I think it's
mm,
one of those things where you sell it to a business like, oh, like, maybe you have your underwriters that are writing apps or you have your whatever writing apps because they need access to a
mm,
particular thing. And there's always this pushback in like the technology like developer circle where it's like that's our job. Our job is to build the apps. Like don't let
yeah,
I'm curious to know like your thoughts about like the whole citizen developer business
mm,
people building UIs with their, let's be real,
right.
their UIs on top of some database or data source, right?
Yeah. Oh, they are. I'm not at all. To answer that question, I'm not at all worried about the people that can get it right, that do something that works and they make it work because they have some. There's some tech person underneath there. Maybe they don't identify as a
Sure.
technical person, but there's something in there, and then they make something and it works. And there are some really great use cases, and there are some really great scenarios. I'm not worried about that at all. I'm worried about all the other ones, which is going to be the vast majority that's going to get it wrong and
Yeah.
do something really bad and mess something up really horribly. And then you still have to add, an engineer at some point to figure things out because this thing that wasn't supposed to be business mission critical or whatnot, uh, guess what? Now it
Yeah.
is, and guess
Yeah.
we were never the age old thing, right? We're just making an internal tool, just a little thing we're going to use around the office. No worries. We're never going to ship that to the customer. You know, fast forward 3 months, this thing is a raging success internally, and somebody says, "Well, we got to give this to the customer."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It was never built for that. It was never built for this at all, right? And now all of a sudden you have this, what the heck? Let's get a tech team in here and they can, manage to get that out to the customers. And the tech guys go, or guys, persons, the tech persons go like, what is
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Oh, I mean,
So
if you
I'm worried about those scenarios, not the, I have this cool idea, let me build a smart little tool for myself. Yes, do that, right?
I mean, I always
Um,
think about like when I was a consultant, like the amount of like you would go to a customer and you would ask them like,
mm,
okay, how do you run your day to day? And it's like, oh, we use Excel and we use Access. And it's like, you think about these productivity tools and you realize really quickly like, oh, like what you really need is an app of some kind, a web app or
yeah,
whatever, right? But because the tools are so easy to use, it's just easier to like have a massive spreadsheet with a bunch of macros in it that do a bunch of nonsense, or you have an access thing, right? And it's always been fascinating to me, like how there is this like critical mass that gets reached with all of these tools, where it's like,
yeah.
okay, you need an app now, and
I think that, yeah,
good,
yeah. I still think that the problem there is that there are a few people that can, straddle both,
yeah,
across the divide and be on both sides of the camp and really find, satisfaction, fascination, and job fulfillment in, oh, look at this macro thing that I made, and
yeah,
it's so intricate, and I can do all these things. It's like, wow, ha, ha, ha. This is an amazing person, by the way, absolutely amazing. Except that most other business people will go like, what is this? I have no idea. I can't use this. This doesn't make sense to me. And I think it's that you want to hold up that, here's this whole product line that lets this one person build an awesome thing. But it's supposed to be every person, and it's not. It's never going to be that,
yeah.
because it's different. It's different types of animals or humans, different types of people, species.
No,
It's,
it's completely true. Like, but
uh,
it's one of those things where if you're able to like squeeze like a little bit of value out of something, like
yeah,
it's worth actually looking into a bit.
it
And I
is.
see this more and more, like, and I want to get back to kind of you, but like I'm curious
No,
about
sure, sure.
like, the big thing right now is the AI thing, right?
Oh yeah.
Whether it's AI assisted like like AI coding assistants, like
Hmm.
Copilot or Cursor or whatever. And then there's like this whole like building models, but like you don't want to
Hmm.
build models, you want to build like agents. You want to build extensions for your AI to be
Yes.
able
Yeah.
to integrate with some particular thing. Like, and if you talk to people, like most of the extensions that are getting built, agents that are getting built, like they're being done like in this low code approach, because most
Hmm.
of us aren't like data science experts or people that know how to like build like models and LLMs from scratch, right?
We
Like,
don't.
is this like an area of tech that's going to continue to expand and maybe sort of cannibalize other pieces of tech, or do you think that like a whole new area is going to get spun
Oh,
off?
well, that's a lot of things to
Yeah,
unpack,
sure,
if you
sure,
will,
sure.
in what you just said there. So first of all, definitely AI is going to stick around. I think AI needs to calm down a little bit. It's very hyped up. Doesn't matter who I talk to, everybody agrees that this thing is very hyped up. Yes, of course, there's going to be so many different cool things we're going to do with AI, without a doubt. We just need to get a little bit peace and quiet again, because it's very deafening right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's somebody screaming A into one ear and I into the other, and there's no other sound. It's all just AI.
Yeah.
Um, at the same time, when you look at what engineers do for businesses out there running their business applications and the different things that are actually done out there, there's a lot of data platform, a lot of data management. There's a lot of cloud platform, a lot of cloud things. And then, of course, still, I would say, how big a portion of all compute is running in the cloud data centers at this time is still the majority is not even in the cloud at all,
Mm-hmm.
right? And with a pretty big margin, I wager. So, while AI has an amazing capability that to add a lot of value, I still think it needs to exhale, take a beat,
Mm-hmm.
and figure out the really good scenarios, because we don't need, we never asked for and never wanted another chatbot from another company, right?
Sure.
It,
Yeah.
it's not what we need. But for the right things, wow. limitless potential for sure. So and another part of that is, disruption. You were saying, and that's why I said that there are several things to unpack there. The reality is that it's already disrupted us in tech, and not necessarily in the way that we all immediately think about. But think about the fact that, in a world of endless of limited resources, in a
Sure.
world of where resources are not endless or limitless, right? You have X number of engineering capacity, you have, Y number of money, and so forth, right? If you're a cloud vendor and you're going to offer some new AI capabilities, and there's a huge race going on, who gets the most AI market first and who is the coolest in AI, you're going to have to take engineering resources from the other products that you have in your
Sure.
portfolio. And so the release cadence rate of new features in the other services that your customers are using daily, are going to slow down. That's just the reality. So it's already has impacted us in quite
Sure.
significant ways. AI is not going to be the only thing in the future. There's still going to be always going to be a lot of different other business apps and compute that have nothing to do with AI because they don't need AI. So, I mean, it's a bit of a rant there, but you know
No,
what I'm
no, it's
talking
not at
about,
all.
right?
Yeah, I
It's
totally do.
it's
It's
yeah,
no, but yeah, I appreciate like that, like that area because like you talk to customers, you talk to people that are trying to build
yeah,
things, and I imagine
mhm,
that most conversations at some point, like, hey, Magnus, tell me about this AI thing. Like, what do I need to worry about it? Do I need to start investing in it? Do I need to do this thing? And I'm not expecting you to right
yeah,
now to tell me like what your thoughts of like should you advise people to invest because I think it's very much your mileage may vary. One of the
yeah.
things, yeah.
I think it's important to talk to them about what they really need,
Mm-hmm.
honestly, because AI is this amazing thing we never asked for and we didn't know that we need. And now there's in this kind of a hype cycle scenario where, if we had product before, product P, we now
Yep.
have to have product P plus AI.
Yep.
Except that because there's a hype and we have to have AI in our product, because everybody apparently have to have that because the market says so. The hype cycle says we have to have AI in our thing. Do we really? Yeah, maybe. Maybe you can find a strong and really good AI scenario to have product plus AI for some reason,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
But a lot of companies feel so stressed and pressured that they just add some, again, a stupid chatbot and say, hey, we have an AI because we have a chatbot.
Yep.
Well, right? That's not really they should. So my biggest advice is to really, again, calm down, try to think, do a workshop of some, get some really smart people from different parts of the company together and sit down and figure this out. Where and why and how would you need AI? And if you don't know, if these people that you're asking don't know what AI could do, get some people in the room that can, explain a little bit of what AI could do, and then figure out what AI you actually need in your product, and then
Yes.
build it.
Yeah. No, I mean that's that.
Right?
It's so funny that like when you say things like very plainly, like it makes sense, but when you
Mm,
talk to actual people, like there's all this
mm,
squishy things around everything, and that
mhm.
that like leads me to want to talk to you like about, you know, you're out there in the world talking to the
Mhm.
community a lot, right? And
Yeah.
obviously what people that are enterprise are doing versus what people in the community are talking about are like completely different planets, right? Um, but when you're out
This
there
is
and
true.
you're talking to people, like what is the general sentiment around like not just the AI tech trends, but like tech trends in general? It's always like very like what is it bullish? Like where you're like everybody wants to buy as much of it as possible. Like
Yeah.
is it like is the tech hype train, is it something that like we should actually be paying attention to, or we should just let it crest and then let it even out and then pay attention to it?
Yeah. That's a great question, and I think that there's a mix there. If you're a company of a certain size, you should have some runners that run out first and check this new thing out and figure things out. If they, let's go back to, and when we're hunter gatherers,
Yep.
we send someone out and they find something new, like, oh, there's this new mushroom we've never seen before. If they eat it and die,
Sure, sure.
you figure like, okay, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Let's not eat this thing because it appears to be poisonous, right? But if they taste a little bit and they get sick, then okay, stay away. But if they start tasting it and then like, this is actually yummy, I can do something with this, right? Then it's similar across to technology again. You need to send someone out there to check out the new thing, AI. What do we do with it? You have to have a team of crazy people that are fearless and wild and can go out there. But that's not at all what the day-to-day business is doing.
Yeah.
We are people on the front line of tech. It's challenging for us to understand that there are so many people out there who, they are in tech for so many years and they have never used the cloud because maybe their business hasn't been able to. Maybe they were highly regulated or whatever. They can't. The medical or something. They haven't been able to use public cloud, for example.
Mm-hmm.
It's strange for a person who has been, doing public cloud since the beginning of public cloud that there are people who have never done it
Yeah.
still in tech, but they have been in tech the same amount of time that I have, but they've never done cloud. There are people out there who don't know how to use Git or don't have a GitHub account. For people who have had that for n number of years, it's really strange to think about. But so to get closer to your question, I think a lot of people go to community meetups and community events to get a glimpse or a peek into that world and see something new that is not what we're doing all the time. But then we go back home. Sometimes we can start to bring something home and maybe affect change at some point in our company. But a lot of people work with way different things than what we see in the front lines and the AI things that we are now talking about at this moment. There's going to be another thing after AI. We don't know what that is yet,
Yeah.
but AI is not the last innovation. It's going to be another one. The AI is kind of deafening at this point, but there's going to be another one, and that's not at all what many people are working with on a day-to-day basis in their company. Not at all, right?
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. I think one thing too, like, and this is obviously one of the main reasons why I go out and speak. Not just to like, not because I love to stand on stage and have people clap for me. That's a nice perk, but it helps ground me because
Yeah.
as somebody in tech like you and I, who, like you said, we're engaging with the people that are building the thing. We know about the thing before it comes out. We know like what's probably going to be announced at the events. We have probably played with the stuff. So
Some
like,
of it, yeah.
yeah, and at least for me, I get a bit complacent sometimes because nothing is new to me. When I see
Yeah.
when I see something for the first time, like publicly, I've seen it for 6 months. So I'm just seeing, like, I see the then I remember, like, oh, it looked terrible 6 months ago. It looks better now. And when I go
Yeah.
to a conference and I talk to people, like I was mentioning earlier, people that maybe have been doing the same tech for a long time, it helps me
Right.
realize that I am an insider and like my experience is very unique to insiders. And there are a
Yes, it
ton of
is.
people out there in the world who they see the thing at, the big first party events or like the larger like community events. And that's the first time they're seeing it. And it,
Yep.
it helps me just remember that, you know, I should be very fortunate to get access to be able to play with these fun toys before they come out.
That's right.
And that's one of the main reasons why I love going to conferences and speaking at events and things is because I get to
Mm-hmm.
see like the full spectrum of like people's reaction to seeing things for the first time. Like
That's true.
I was just in Prague a couple of weeks ago. I spoke at an Update conference and I was doing a talk and somebody came up to me and they were like, "How do you know so much about this?" And I'm like, "Well, I mean, I've been doing it for a long time. Like, it's part of the thing." And they're
But
like,
it's
"But
brand new.
yeah, but it's brand new." And I'm like, "Well, it." And I kind of gave him a little bit of the inside of like the trick to being a speaker is you just need to know just a little bit more than the attendees, right? Like you
Just
don't need
one or two things
yeah,
more,
you
and
don't
then
need to
all of a
be
sudden you're the expert.
I mean, expert is a fictitious word, right? Like nobody's an expert of
Of course.
anything,
Of
right?
course. Yeah.
Like I just need to know enough, and I have to be passionate enough to make people excited about learning more. Like that's my whole goal as
That's
a
right.
speaker, right?
That's right.
So like,
Yeah, no, I'm very fortunate in that space as well. I think like I had a bit of a scheduling accident this fall when it comes to to conferences. I have been already speaking on 4 continents this fall since October, which is it's a little crazy.
yeah, that's rough.
It's over the top.
That's
It's
rough.
not my business. My business is to actually help customers get their stuff right when it comes to cloud. That's what I do.
Yeah.
That's what actually pays me money. But I go to these conferences and speak in order to see all the crazy things that other people are also doing.
Yep.
And that's, I gather a lot of intel and acumen about or know-how about this industry from, what are you talking about at this conference? Oh, you're talking about this. How does that work?
Yeah.
And you get the crazy or devoted, excited, deep, technical,
Yeah.
crazy, right? Person who is like, I'm all into this tech and I'm doing this thing with this thing and we're doing that. And you go like, you get that times what, 10 from different people at any conference. And then all of a sudden it's like, wow, there are so many amazing things going on, right? Crazy things too going on around us. And that's why I go to the conferences to speak. That's why I go to community meetups as well, because you see all these other people who are passionate about have the same drivers, and you can learn a lot from that. I do.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing, and also like it's also nice connecting with people that share similar interests as you. I mean, I was talking
Oh
to you a
yeah,
bit before we got started. Like, the whole reason why I have this show is to talk to people for an hour, right? Like, I
yep.
very much enjoy talking with people that care about this silly thing called tech as much as I do. And I think
Right.
you're like one of those people that is even more passionate about than I am. Like, I look like one of the things. I think my first introduction to you was doing like the like it was at one point called the Azure Bootcamp, and now it's Global Azure.
Yeah.
Like
Global Azure.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. Like, first maybe talk a little bit about what it is for the people who
hmm
might not know, but then I'd love to hear like the origin story for it, like why you felt like it was something that needed to exist in the world.
That's a good question, or a good thing. Thank you for mentioning it. So Global Azure is globalazure.net these days, or the URL, the domain is globalazure.net. We have just announced now that we are doing the 2025 edition of Global Azure. It's going to be in May 8, 9, and 10.
Mm-hmm.
And what it is at its core is like some hundreds of communities around the world who are interested in learning about cloud technology, or specifically Azure cloud technology. They put on their own events the way that makes sense to their community. If they're an advanced community, they have very advanced sessions. If they are intro, they do other things. And if they want to do IT, they do IT. Doesn't matter. It has to be, something that works for the local community. And then everybody does community events on the same day. So we try to get some sponsors together for that. And we've in some years before, we haven't managed to start that up since the pandemic, but we had like a global lab that anyone could participate in and deploy the same thing around the world. We've had some hundreds of thousands of hours of compute for a good cause or something like
Yeah.
that during. So it's all about learning about Azure, really. And so why did we think that needed to exist? Well, so the origin story is that I was proud and happy and newly minted Azure MVP in Sweden. I was the first one to become an Azure MVP in the Nordic countries. So I was very happy about that. And then there was this other Azure enthusiast who became the second one in Sweden. His name is Alan Smith. So he's originally from the UK, but he lives he has a family and he lives in Stockholm. So we were two MVPs. And we were like, well, should we do some MVP things now? What do MVPs do?
Yeah,
We were
yeah.
like, oh,
Right.
I'm new here. What do I do? So let's do a conference. Why not? And so I said, he lives in Stockholm. I live in Malmo. It's about an hour flight, so it's not too far, but we're not next door. I'll do an event in Malmo. You can come down, and you can do one in Stockholm. I'll come up, and then we were like, wait, what if we do it on the same day?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be fun? Wouldn't that be nerdy? And let's do that. And so we'll do it on the same day. what if we have a remote session, that we could, do the same session across, two different locations. And then all of a sudden it's like, you know what? We have these friends, other MVP friends, right? In the same, distribution list with Microsoft,
Sure.
have gone to the same MVP summit. We started to get to know some people. And again, this network that we were talking about, right? So we have these people that we know in Belgium. And what about that guy in England? And hey, wait, there's this Israeli person, and so on and so forth, right? And so we went out with this idea that what if we do a lot of events on the same day? We were like, what if 10 events on the same day? Wouldn't that be cool? So we started posting, excuse me, about this on their internal aliases distribution lists for Microsoft MVP. So we used the Azure MVP alias, and we sent out, we want to do this community event, and what if everybody does one on the same day?
Yeah.
And it just went, just completely, it was bananas.
Yeah.
We had like 96 locations in 36 countries on the first year. And it was just a thing that we found, like we just took community and ignored geography.
Yeah.
And and just we didn't even know that that was going to happen, right? So we just discovered something like, like you're a scientist. We were like digging or something, and we discovered this thing. Like, what? Can you do community events on a global scale? That's nuts. And since then, to be honest, like there are so many, including a couple of Microsoft events that have all called themselves over the time, called themselves like Global X Bootcamp. Like there and they are so good. Don't get me wrong, there's no issue there. But we honestly were the first ones who kind of discovered that it was possible to do community, except globally limitless.
Yeah.
and it's so fun.
It's fascinating to me because, I mean, it's one of those things that you think about it. It's like, oh, like that makes a ton of sense, and it's just it's just one of those things. Where yeah. But even at the time, I imagine that as you were like talking to other people that again were as passionate about you, it's like this is a no-brainer. There's zero reason to not do this. Or were there people that were like, people aren't going to watch that, like people aren't going to show up? Was there a bit of trepidation?
So a lot of things, a lot of tech, for example, Microsoft existed before, like Windows and Office and a bunch of different other offerings that Microsoft were selling. They all existed, but I think Azure was the first thing that had a strong connection to globality, right? You can be anywhere and do Azure. Azure is everywhere. You can deploy your app on the other side of the world. That was I think the thing that lit it up or tied it all together for us. And then we just got lucky, of course, right? And again, I want to like triple underline that the glory of all this goes to all the community leaders out there who nurture and grow and run their own communities and run their community events. We never ever have ever and will ever take credit for all the great work that they do. Basically what we do, or we are just glorified secretaries that send a lot of emails. That's what GlobalAzure is.
Well, I mean, you're the network, right?
Network.
So like
the network I can give you.
Yeah, like I think
Sure.
we're talking about a bit earlier, like career stuff. Like networking is like the name of the game, and I think the ability.
But we don't own anything.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Right?
Yeah, sure.
Azure doesn't own anything at all.
Yeah, it's a website and some really passionate folks that plug pieces together, and maybe something happens or something needs to get done. It's like the right person to call, like to get these sort of things, right? It's fascinating. Like this is kind of one of the things I want to wrap up on is like obviously like community is a big part of I think your personality in tech. I think probably your personality in general. Like what is it about community that like really resonates with you? Like when did you realize like community was a thing that you really enjoyed about this industry? And I'd love to just get as we start to close, like your thoughts about the community in general.
So I'm slightly atypical in terms of being a tech geeky person. I think that statistically, I don't know the real numbers there, but I think that it is statistically probably more likely that people in tech are more introverted because we sit, maybe alone in our office with our computer and we do, tech stuff with that. We maybe are programmers or something.
Sure.
And I think it's kind of common to be have an introverted type of
Sure. Sure.
personality in tech, I would say. I don't think that's going out on a limb. I'm the opposite. I'm very extroverted.
Mm-hmm.
I can't help it, right? I love to get on a stage. I love to stand up in front of people. And after having done it for many years, we actually talked about this actually in Tunis at the conference that I was down there. And he said how there was this guy and he was interested and asked, how is it possible that so many people at this conference they have commentary about your choice of wardrobe or what you said or did or how you appeared or something like that. And I said, like the same as with every other skill. If you become somebody who can play the piano beautifully well or something, that's a skill. Like shopping is a skill. You go out and do a lot of shopping over many years, and you become really good at shopping. That's why many women love shopping, for example, and they always complain that my guy doesn't want to go shopping with me, but he never does, so he doesn't know how to do it. It's not a skill that he has mastered, right?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
I'm generalizing, but
Sure. Sure.
but generalizing just for the sake of argument, right? And again, I am good at being visible. So I love community. I love networking and going out there and that's my driver for it. And I some people find that intimidating or scary and maybe don't want to be included in a big conversation group, rather have a one-on-one. And that's great too. But I still urge people to go to community events because there's going to be many other like-minded people there who are passionate about the same tech that you are, and not all of them, only a few are as extroverted as I am,
Sure.
and many are just quite normal, not like me, and you're going to find a lot of people. You're going to find your peers, people that you see at an eye level with. Or you can say, I see you at an eye level, Sir Isaac. You're a tech individual like me. You're passionate about the same nerdy things. That's what tech and community is about, and that's why you go there to just delve into the same geekery that you love so much.
Yeah.
In my
Yeah. I mean, I think we're all looking for, you know, not to get super anthropological, but we're all looking for like our tribe of like the 150 people that we're supposed to like be with, right?
Of course.
And I think community is a big part of that. I also think that, most of us don't have the luxury of being married to somebody else that shares the same profession as us. So when we talk to our spouses are supportive of us, but they probably aren't as passionate in regards to it as we are. So finding people out in the world that you can sit down and talk with them for an hour about literally nonsense.
And it feels like 5 minutes, or not 5, but it feels like 15 minutes, right? And it's been an hour.
Yeah, that's why I think the community, like, I love it so much. And it's funny because I think back occasionally, it's because I was in tech for a long time, like without being in the community. Like I was, what they call like that, back room or dark matter developer, right? Like I just did the work and whatever. And then I just got like a little taste of it, and I was like, oh, like this is far more enjoyable than what I was currently doing.
Yep. No, it's true. I've always been on stage myself, but it's true that if you dip your toe out there, and I've come to, after having done this for a good number of years, I have come to a point where I can quite enjoy helping someone else or supporting someone else on that journey as it is new to them. The first presentation on stage.
Yeah.
You know what? I can help you. Like I can help you prepare for this. I've done this many times. And it's at that point you get to see, similar to what we were saying before, so many circles in this conversation. Have you noticed that you get to experience it a little bit again with fresh eyes, because through the eyes of someone, live vicariously for a moment through someone who is new. Who's new, right?
Yeah, the living vicariously thing is so true. Like, when you like, if you're talking to somebody about something that they don't know about, and then the light comes on or the click happens, and you're like, okay, yes, right.
There's this jolt.
Yeah, like,
and they sit up and they go like,
like my big thing is always like, my wife will ask me like, "Oh, do you think your talk went well or whatever?" And I'm like, "I saw people nodding their heads, so I think so, right?"
Yeah, I think
I
so. Yeah.
mean, and you never really know like if you're real if your talk is good, like you get some like metrics, but like at the end of the day, like if I can make sure that one person like leaves that room
Hmm.
and like goes to the Azure portal or whatever and like does the thing, that's it. That's what
That's it.
that's what I'm in it for. Um,
Agreed. And you will
yeah,
always find this one person who maybe is disgruntled for some
sure,
reason,
sure, sure.
or and that's you're going to have to try to not focus on that person,
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
that's not the one you want to focus on. You want to focus
No.
on the person that you were able to touch with that tech idea, and they were like, "Oh, wait a minute, that was interesting."
Yeah. This conversation has been so great. I mean, it's always good to see you. Like I said, at the intro,
Hmm.
it like I see you a few times a year, and it's always great
Yep.
to see you. And I'm glad that I got an hour of your time.
Oh, thank you.
As we wrap up, I love to, ask my guests like, you've been in tech for a long time, and
This
this
is true.
this might be a hard question, but like when you think of tech, like what are some of the feelings that come to mind for you? Like use a couple of words if you want. Like I'm just generally curious. Like we've talked about your career in tech to an extent and the things that you care
Hmm.
about. Like what are some of the things that like the words that resonate with you when you think about those things?
Um, and it's not only for tech, but in general for being an expert. That's been my career. That's been my life, to be an expert of some kind, as in, this is the person we call. Who you gonna call? The Ghostbusters. This is the person we
Yeah.
call to fix things. I've been a consultant my entire professional career, and I've always come in to make things better, fix it, and sometimes you come in when it's all green and we haven't done anything yet. We wanted to call you first and get your handle on it, but that's usually not the case. So there's an expression in Latin that I really care for. It's only two words, so it's not too difficult. It's experto crede, which means trust the expert.
Mm.
That's what I do. That's who I am. How I identify as someone who can fix your thing, and
Yeah.
not your printer though. Not that, but
Well, no one can fix printers. Like that's just yeah.
anything but the printer. But that's what I do, and that's my job, and I'm grateful to have that job. I'm very happy and glad that I can do that and move, people's business and help them,
Yeah.
nudge it. I love that.
Yeah, I mean,
It's who I am.
it's good to be a catalyst, right?
Yeah, and that's
Like,
who I am. So
yeah,
that's
this has been great, and I think for folks that if you're not already following Magnus, like please, like it's very easy, like everywhere you have the same handle, so
no up man.
NOOPMAN, Noopman,
Yep,
like
no up man.
literally, it's the if you Google that, it's the first search comes up,
It's the
right?
first thing that comes
Yeah,
up everywhere.
yeah.
Yes.
So, but there'll be some links to some specific places where you can learn more about the great things that he's doing. Um, this has been great. Like as we sign off, do you have any parting words, my friend?
Parting words. Well, it's to just continue, honestly, go out in the community. We talked a lot about community today.
Yeah,
Find your people that are crazy like you, and crazy in the same way that you're crazy, and hang out with them. That's been a large key to my both, the measure of success, whatever, to my career at least, right? And to the passion that I have for this field. So do that. Go out in the community and have fun.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So I thank you so much for your time and for the folks that are
Hey,
watching
thanks.
live, folks that are listening in the future. My name is Isaac Levin, and this has been Coffee and Open Source, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.